And I want to extend an invitation to anybody in this room who is suffering mentally that my door will always be open. And I always appreciate Mavericks. And talking about suicide awareness, Mavericks are at great risk of suicide. To name a few, Chester Benefield, Keith Flint, Robin Williams, they were all Mavericks in their field, and they took their own life. And one of my favourite quotes from Robin Williams actually was that he said, "I used to think the worst thing in life was to be all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to be surrounded by people who make you feel all alone." And there's so much truth in that, because in psychology they call it the bystander effect. We might see people struggling and we keep walking. We just walk past them because we think it's somebody else's problem. It's all of our problem. Mental health affects absolutely everybody, and everybody should have first aid training to spot the signs and to do something, because you can literally save a life.
I call upon Councillor Simon Morrall to move the amendment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Simon Morrall from Frankly Great Park Ward in South Birmingham. Colleagues, it's always refreshing to be able to stand up here and leave politics at the door, and I think we can all agree this is one of those issues. Last night I went home and wrote a very long speech, and I woke up this morning and ripped it up, and I've just wrote some notes actually that I want to go through, because as you all know, this is very personal to me. I lost one of my friends to suicide. It was my maiden speech in 2018, and my friend was he was a member of the Labour Party, and we used to debate all the time about politics. And in a time when politics has got very, very toxic, he reminds me why I got into politics. And it was part of my election address when I got elected, was to campaign about young men in particular in society who are falling behind and very much being ignored. And I donated a sum of my council allowance to the charity Campaign Against Living Miserably, which was founded by a feminist. So this is nothing to do with so-called men's rights activism. It's just about helping men open up about their experiences. And we as a council voted unanimously on this, and quite rightly so. And one of the objections in 2018 from members was that we didn't want this strategy to be sitting on a shelf. And I'm really, really grateful, Councillor Hamilton, that this has not been sitting on a shelf, and a lot of work has gone into it. So I want to extend again my gratitude and thanks to you and to Dr. Justin Varney for the work that you've been putting into this. Now, the reason we've obviously raised this amendment is COVID obviously has affected all of us. Today we're here with masks again. And I don't know anybody that hasn't suffered with mental health during the struggle. And I think we've realised actually how valuable our parklands are, actually, frankly. And I think it's really important that we do take another look at that. And I'm really happy with the Zero Suicide Alliance, the public health lunch, and I'm also happy to see that in the report you do explicitly state about the issues affecting men, and in particular veterans as well, which is also really important. I'm also pleased to see the government stepping up. £2.3 billion is being invested in mental health services by 2023-2024. They're recruiting at 1,000 extra mental health staff, and during COVID there's a mental health recovery fund of 500 million. However, I will admit I don't think that's anywhere near enough, and I will always continue to badger the government for more funding for mental health. In fact, I'm going to announce today, you will remember in April I said I was going to donate my pay rise to charity. I believe it's about £700. Today I'm going to announce that money will be going to the Samaritans helpline. That will be £700 net, so that is after tax. So I'm not phoning HR to get them to go first. I'm just going to go and give them a cheque of £700 from the councillor allowance. Now, I wrote some more notes here about purpose and ensuring that people have purpose in their lives, because mental health is only one side of this coin. On the other side of the coin, we need to be encouraging that everybody in this city, particularly our young people, have opportunity and can go out and have purpose in their life, so that they get out of bed every morning with some kind of purpose. And I wanted to talk a little bit about social psychology and how people can very often fall into groupthink. And in psychology, they call this de-individualisation. It's like when football hooligan gangs, for example, cause trouble in the streets. They're doing it because they're part of a collective. They're not doing it individually. And we often do this in politics. We often shout at one another based upon our group identity, and we forget that actually there are people. And I want to state here today, because we're leaving politics at the door, that the individual is sovereign. That is one of our British values. And while I may absolutely despise your politics, I might hate your politics, I will always love the person. And some of the people in this chamber who I have had probably the most confrontation with politically, I actually have the most respect for. And I want to extend an invitation to anybody in this room who is suffering mentally, that my door will always be open. And I always appreciate Mavericks. And talking about suicide awareness, Mavericks are at great risk of suicide. To name a few: Chester Bedingfield, Keith Flint, Robin Williams. They were all Mavericks in their field, and they took their own life. And one of my favourite quotes from Robin Williams actually was that he said, "I used to think the worst thing in life was to be all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to be surrounded by people who make you feel all alone." And there's so much truth in that, because in psychology they call it the bystander effect. We might see people struggling and we keep walking. We just walk past them because we think it's somebody else's problem. It's all of our problem. Mental health affects absolutely everybody, and everybody should have first aid training to spot the signs and to do something, because you can literally save a life. And I think that's really also potent to say in the light of the death of Sir David Amess as well, that behind the pantomime of this political chamber, we are all human at the end of the day, and we all do have emotions. And I think that, once again, I will extend my invitation out to anybody who wants to talk about their issues. And I will just finalise by a quote that I said in my maiden speech. As the largest local authority in Europe, the largest council in Europe, we should strengthen our resolve as a city and have a zero tolerance to suicide. We should aim to smash the stigma surrounding mental health, and as the second city, become the gold standard for the rest of the country to follow. And as the second city, become the gold standard for the rest of the country to follow. And I hope you all will join me in achieving that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I start by saying, Councillor Morrall, I have been humbled at your passion in this area. You've really not stopped. You know, you'd see me in the corridor and you'd say, where are we at with that, Paulette? You have really, really committed to something and you followed it through. And can I assure you today that you're right, mental health, and this is the words I always use, it is everybody's business. There are many reasons why people want to commit suicide, but one of the main reasons out there, mental health issues, they're in crisis, they don't know where to turn. So, Simon, Councillor Morrall, thank you, because you have been a stalwart in this area and you've not given up. And I'm telling you, as long as I've got breath in my body, this piece of work will continue. Can I end by saying, I know Councillor Morrall has put forward an amendment to the motion. And to be honest, I'm actually happy to agree, because what he says is actually right. The pandemic has had a profound impact on mental health issues in this city. We still haven't seen what the absolute statistics will be with people now living with mental health, and I do think that it should be added to the work that we're doing on this report. So to end, when you do have the strength to walk through the darkness, reach for a hand, because you never know when sometimes you're walking through, but sometimes if you actually look in the sand, there's 4 of you walking, but you only see 2 footprints. Sometimes when you see someone in trouble, just give them a hand. Thank you very much, and thank you, Lord Mayor. And